All right, guys, welcome back to another 10-Minute Tuesday. We have Graham Gresseth of Maxed Out Guides here with us today. Before we get going, this 10-Minute Tuesday is brought to you guys by Flashback. Have you used Flashbacks, Graham? I gotta get you a Flashback. Okay. You gotta try these things. Right. Have you seen them?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so they're built like a brick shit house.
Okay.
In the USA.
Okay.
In Colorado by a guy who's from Minnesota.
Okay.
And the head revolves around in the water, and when it goes down into the water, makes the butt go up in the air.
Yes. Yep. Okay.
Dude, they're unbelievable, and all the parts are completely replaceable. These things are just like, in my opinion, right? It seems like some of the motion decoys you're starting to they're not working as good as they used to.
Right. Yeah.
This is a decoy that is working really good.
Okay.
Because all the parts are put together.
Okay.
Properly. So you got to check it out, man. Graham, 10-Minute Tuesday, we're going to talk about weather patterns.
Yep.
And hunting pressure.
Okay.
And a little bit about the moon cycle.
Okay.
Because I think these are some things that people just don't really maybe think about.
Yep.
So let's start with hunting pressure.
Yeah.
How much is that affecting you right now?
Hunting pressure is probably one of the biggest hunting pressure and weather phase tie together a lot when you talk about like making hunts on fire or dead. And it's definitely become more of a challenge, I would say, over the last 4 years, especially with ducks, especially if you're dry field hunting ducks.
Yeah.
Hunting pressure and the climate and the weather, just significantly affect your opportunity to even be able to hunt ducks, because there's so many times where they just won't leave the water during legal shooting time, like where you literally do not have an opportunity to hunt them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so I think where we're headed with this, right?
Yep.
Birds are literally feeding at night.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
At night. And especially if you see a full moon cycle come, good luck, buddy.
Yep. Yep.
Good luck. Because, I mean, especially if you're like in the metro, you're in big trouble, man.
Yep. Not going to happen.
You're not shooting them.
Nope. No.
And and I've spent this whole season just watching water to water.
Yep.
And they know what water you can't hunt.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
Like, don't think birds don't know that you can't hunt the park pond.
Yep.
They definitely know it.
Yep.
And they go from the park pond to the soccer fields at the school.
Yep.
And then they go back to the park.
Yep.
And that's what they're doing, man.
Yeah.
And they don't have to do anything but that.
Right. And don't think that they don't know the time when you can hunt them.
Oh, yeah.
Because they will, especially ducks. Ducks will show up to the field 90 seconds after sundown.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like clockwork, dude.
At 90 seconds.
Yep.
Okay, you think about the entire day, right? That duck is sitting there, and somehow, some way, he knows the second that he cannot be killed in a field.
Yeah.
Because they get up in the roost, they leave, they will literally land next to you while you're picking up decoys.
Yeah, it's really funny you say that too, because I found this year, which, scouting them like that really sucks, but I've never been more successful accidentally scouting on my way home from work.
Yeah.
When the sun is down.
Yep.
The hunting's over.
Yep.
And I'm watching ducks go into a field, and it's 20 minutes after shooting line.
You see a huge twist.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's just crazy to me.
Yep.
If you wanted to find birds, and typically you'd have to be out 2:00 in the afternoon, and you want to be starting to put miles on and checking the roosts.
Yep.
Seeing what's going where.
Yep.
But man, yeah, this year you could see them on the roost. I'm not kidding you, Graham, till 20 minutes before shooting light.
Yep.
And then they stay in the air for 30 minutes, and then they're down, and you can't shoot them anymore.
Yeah. What they will do is they'll get up off of that roost, and they'll fly to the field. And then they'll fly back to the roost.
Yeah.
They'll do that 30 minutes before sundown, right? But they don't feed. They just they're going there to check it out. They come back, they sit back down on the roost.
Yeah.
They might do that one more time and they sit back down on the roost, but then it's like when it's time to feed, 90 seconds after sundown. They come out and they are in the field. They're not spinning it. They are just literally getting in.
Fully dumped.
And eating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, so as a guide service now, I have clients that reference that, like when they come out, are the ducks feeding nocturnally right now?
Isn't that insane?
Yep.
When do you feel like you really started even seeing that at all?
I would say in the last 5 years, we've definitely seen that more.
Yeah.
And we, where we hunt in South Dakota, we saw it Like when we go out in our hunts that we do in South Dakota, I call it guide vacation because we hunt in a pretty remote area. And it doesn't typically get a lot of pressure, and we don't have to deal with that out there. The weather cycles don't matter as much out there, right? This year it did. This year, because I had one of our groups that had come out. They come out from North Carolina, and they'd come out to Kansas before. And he's like, "Are the ducks feeding nocturnally right now?" I was like, "Yeah, they are a little bit." I said, "On this day and this day, we're going to have to hunt water. We're not going to be able to hunt them in the field, but on this day, we're going to be able to get them." Right.
How did you know that then, looking at that, just based on the weather pattern?
Just all weather.
Yeah.
If it's going to be sunny and less than 10 miles an hour wind, you are, as I look at it, like, cause we pay, every time we go somewhere, we're paying somebody to hunt, right? It's like, we are not going to waste our money going to hunt that feed because we are never going to kill them.
And they'll just sit on water.
They're just going to sit on water all day.
Yeah.
Right. And, and this year where we hunt, we saw more duck hunters and we do our best to keep that very much on lockdown.
Yeah.
But we saw more duck hunters out there this year than we ever have before. And coincidentally enough, we dealt with a lot more nocturnal feeds this year than we ever have before.
Wow. So you basically think it's a direct correlation to people hunting them, and they're just getting so smart.
Yes.
That they don't care anymore. They're just going to feed at night.
Without a doubt.
The craziest thing too this year that I saw was typically in the past, I feel like a lot of the time I can really track that it's the moon cycle that's causing it.
Yep.
But this year that it was like the moon cycle was like 2 weeks.
Yep.
In the past, I feel like when you're on a full moon cycle where they're feeding nocturnally, it seemed like that was like a good 4-day stretch maybe.
Yep.
The 2 before, the day of, the 2 after, maybe something like that.
Right.
This year, I felt like it's 10 days from a full moon cycle, and these birds are feeding in the middle of the night anyway.
Yeah.
Now we're 5 days past a moon cycle, and these birds are feeding still at night.
Yep.
And that didn't shut off. It felt like for like a week and a half after the full moon.
Well,
so I'm just
so typically on those, there's things there's good and bad that comes with the full moon, right? The full moon typically brings new birds. However, it can also lead to horrendous, terrible, shitty hunting.
Yeah.
But the full moon can also bring the full moon frequently brings a lot of fronts, right? So typically on a full moon, you're going to have a tough stretch yes, you're going to get new birds, but yes, you're going to have a tough stretch. But then typically on that full moon, you're going to have some weather event either on the front end of it or the back end of it. And you need that to break up that pattern, because if you don't have that front to break up that pattern, it just gets ingrained in their DNA, and it's just eat, sleep, repeat, eat, sleep, repeat. Typically, if you get like a heavy cloud cover, windy day, typically that will break them out of that pattern. However, the last couple of years, we've seen it more and more where even on days like that, they would still feed after sundown. I had 4 different hunts this year where I hunted them. Normally, like if you're hunting big honkers, if you're hunting ducks, the second it starts raining, birds leave the roost to come feed. And they're going to be in the field until the rain stops. I had 4 different hunts this year where we sat in the rain and those birds never moved. They did not leave the roost. Yeah. They did not come out to feed. They just sat. I've never seen that before.
They didn't feel like they had to leave at all.
No.
Not preparing for anything.
No. So, when you're a guide, like you look at I was like, oh, rain, we're good. We're going to be good. We're going to be able to hunt these birds tomorrow. And you sit and you wait and you wait and you wait, and there really isn't much worse. Slow days always suck. Slow days when you're getting rained on, exponentially worse than anything else.
Sure.
It's awful, right? It's awful.
Yeah, being wet and not shooting anything, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to throw a crazy idea at you.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is something that I've been thinking about a lot.
Yep.
We know that birds in the past, because of the full moon, would migrate on a full moon because they have the visibility they need.
Right.
We also know that birds have adapted continually to where now a lot of birds migrate by highway light.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
And as our cities are getting bigger and we're building more roads,
yep,
we are providing a lot more light paths and light in general
okay,
for these birds to migrate
right,
than ever before.
Sure.
Do you think that that is in some way just the expansion of cities and the expansion of roadways? Is that changing the way that birds are now migrating, where we can't necessarily look at a full moon cycle and say we're for sure getting this push, and when they show up, they're going to have to feed?
I mean, maybe a little bit. I think, what you always have to remember about waterfowl is they are, they're inherently simple, right? They want to eat, they want to sleep, they want to have sex in the spring, and they don't want to die.
And they want to migrate.
Right. And throughout all of that, they're going to do all of that while migrating, right? So it's a really, it's overall, it's kind of crazy to think about because how hard they are to kill some days, but they're a very simple, they don't have a lot of problem solving abilities, as, a greenhead doesn't have a lot of problem solving abilities. But, what you see is, I think more and more is that they're just like us. Like if they have a spot where they can go and get all of the food that they want and they're not going to die, they're going to stay there as long as they possibly can until that ground is covered up, until it's frozen, until, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
Now, I think the cities and the roads and all those things, that's an interesting idea because that probably does affect where and how some of those birds migrate. It probably changes some migration patterns. I know wind towers have been told by, game and fish officers that wind towers significantly affect migration.
Yeah.
Areas that have, like, if it's a big roost and if there's wind towers now on the north side of it, birds won't roost on that lake. They won't migrate into that lake. They'll kind of get diverted and go out to other areas.
Yeah, they're terrified of
them. Yeah, which I mean, I can't
totally.
Yeah. But, I think if you look at it, I truly do think that it is really, and it's crazy because we started the show, like the show earlier, talking about the decline in duck hunting numbers. But the people, it seems like there's more people hunting them in the ways that we want to hunt them, which definitely, without a doubt, affects their feeding patterns, their migration patterns, where they stay, where they roost, where they loaf. All of those things are affected by that without a doubt.
Yeah.
But yet, duck stamp sales are down, right? So that's some of those things, it's just one of those things that just doesn't quite all add up, because every landowner you talk to has got a cousin or a nephew or a grandson, that's coming out to hunt them that weekend. Right.
Totally.
Right. But yet, so a lot of those dots don't always connect on that stuff, but we just see it more and more and more. Man, when those birds are pressured, they just shut down.
Totally.
They don't
have to do what you want them to do.
Right. Yep.
And they've figured that out. They know they can feed at night.
Yep.
And you're screwed.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing we talked about, on the show, where it's like they know what the park field is.
Yep.
They know where they're safe.
Yep.
And if they know that if they're safe 90 seconds after shooting light, that's when they're going to show up every day.
Where they're safe, when they're safe.
Yeah, man.
It's all those things.
Yeah, and if they have the food source and they can show up and feed really hard for an hour, in a field, and it's dark out, they know where they're going, man. They're going to go right back, and we've got the lights in the city to allow them to get back there.
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
Well, Graham, thank you so much, man. We appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
As always, we'll have to have you back next year. But again, if you guys want to book a hunt with Graham, maxedoutguides.com or
geeseforus.com.
geeseforus.com.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. We'll talk to you.
Thanks, bud.